Chapter 6 starts us with Zero being extremely prejudiced towards our choice of friends and leaves in a fit of rage and once again leaving our party to go his own way. Like he won't be crawling back in like 5 minutes anyway. I say, that's fine since we're doing a solo run anyway and the less people bleaching off my XP bar, the better. However, what does bother me is why he doesn't approve of our friends who have only been guilty of thievery, bounty hunting, identity theft, a literal child, and Axel. Massimo assures us he'll come around, but I'm kind of low-key hoping he doesn't because our party is getting a bit cramped, so my XP gain isn't looking too good right now. During the meeting in the command room, Redips tells X not to dwell on the situation and tells us about a secret research lab which will be the location of our next mission. Unfortunately, it'll take some time, so we take a small break and... Well, if that isn't weird, I don't know what is.
Hey, X. Something up?
Yeah. Got a transmission from the Colonel.
Oh, are we not going to question that, X? Are you really not going to question the literal transformation animation we just saw Axel do a few moments ago? Really not addressing that? Okay. So after vibe checking Axel regarding Marno's lustful gaze turning out to be a misunderstanding, we do some setting up before we hit the road as usual. The weapon shop this time around has a ton more things for sale, including Mark II versions of all 3 elemental busters and even sabers for Zero, who isn't in our party again. Yeah, if that's not confirmation he joins soon, then I don't know what is. Meanwhile, the Force Metal shop doesn't really have much for sale this time around, except maybe weapon energy plus 10 if you're into that. Basically, everything we currently have is more than enough for us. Back at the secret shop, we finally pull the plug on stocking up on all boost items because Mach Gentra taught us that boost items are going to be absolutely necessary for the rest of the run if we want to keep up on the damage and resources. Unfortunately, I still don't have enough for my Turbo Buster. But I did end up buying random shit, such as this Assassin Mine Force Metal and the aforementioned Vitality Missiles just in case. In the deployment center, I got a second Good Luck Force Metal, which kind of tarnishes all those gain hypers I used earlier for the one I already had, but let's not dwell on that. Now that setup is finished, it's time to begin Chapter 6 proper. Once we reach our destination, we're greeted with the cutscene between X and Spider, but most importantly some foreshadowing. You see what I did there? Because his name is... yeah. Anyways, this is the Gimme All of Mines. Unlike the last area, this dungeon is pretty straightforward and a lot simpler exploration-wise. While it does have many more rooms and side paths to explore, it's never overbearing due to one feature that exists in this dungeon, the lift shortcuts. Basically, this lift connects to all of the other floors, but you can't really reach the other floors until you gain access to them. But since this lift is so close to the entrance to the level, backtracking is extremely simple since you can just pick up where you left off. There's a lot of enemy variants in this dungeon. For example, there are these glob enemies that are weak to specific elements and can grow stronger if you hit them with an element that they absorb, while they also have passive regen themselves. There's a bunch of different metars, including gold and silver ones that you can farm money off of and act as fodder for your melee attackers, a new variation of bat bones that can actually pack quite a punch, and more. This dungeon does an incredible job at making sure party rotating remains relevant if you want to make combat easier on yourself. On the flip side, this actively works against me because, yeah, solo run. But I endure, and we eventually find the booster parts that will allow X to break these rocks dotted about by dashing through them, opening up new paths for us to explore. From here, we just grab more items, find the elevator switch to grant us access to the next floor, save, and then proceed down to basement 3, where we run into a familiar face. That's right, Shadow the Egghead is back, and he's crazier than ever. Along with spouting exposition about Super Force Metal, a thing we have no reason to ever know about, he decides to also tell us at least part of the Rebellion Army's plans like a good villain should before finally fighting us.
I'll tear all of you to little pieces!
That's right, we're plunged immediately into a boss fight with Shadow the Crane game in the middle of a dungeon. Well, it's technically a mini-boss fight, but that's not what it feels like. This fight has 2 phases. Phase 1 Shadow the Bong Bong has 18,000 life energy and takes normal damage from all elemental attacks. His standard strike deals combat damage to one target, His fatal attack deals heavy combat damage to one target with a guaranteed critical hit chance. Codebreaker deals combat damage to one target and has a chance to instantly kill you. Fragmenting Cannon deals 50% of your current hit points in damage and ignores defense. Break Shield to give himself a major power boost in exchange for a shield stat. And finally, he can begin charging energy for his Pulverizer Cannon attack that deals 75% of every party member's current hit points and damage. This fight sucks major robo-dicks. Remember when I said Psyche was the first wall of the game? Now imagine that wall, but much bigger. Like, not the Great Wall of China big, that comes later, but much bigger than your average wall experience. You remember Matador from Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne, or even the Minotaur from Shin Megami Tensei 4. Well, imagine those fights, but 10 times harder, maybe even 100 times harder. Are you seeing the big picture now? This fight is virtually impossible without getting extremely lucky most of the time. You might be thinking that's just how RPGs are, and you couldn't be more wrong. In Shin Megami Tensei, when you die, that's always a skill issue on your part, unless it's not. But here, every decision you make could be your last, and the game makes sure you are constantly aware of this fact because of the turn order. This fight has Shadow the Shadow playing with his food until he decides to finally eat the rest of your health bar like it's a Snickers. Except unlike Snickers, this won't change him back to his normal self. Managing resources in this fight is kinda like paying taxes. If you don't pay enough, you go to jail, and if you pay too much, you end up homeless. There's just no winning here in this fight unless you play perfectly all the way until the very end. Now the Wikia swears that this phase of the fight only lasts 8 turns, but that's a blatant lie. No surprises that the Wikia is wrong about something in a video game though, huh? So we're going to have to figure out how we're going to burn through all 18,000 of Shadow the Ding Dong's hit points while surviving his onslaught of attacks. You also might be wondering why I haven't gotten to the strat on how to do this fight, and that's honestly a good question. To give you an honest answer, I really wanted to emphasize just how agonizing this fight is in real time by just letting these first few attempts play out because it is excruciating how tense this fight ends up being. Multiple times I was reduced to double or even single digits by Fragmenting Cannon and was given the opportunity for free hits, and sometimes I miscalculate a life gain and eat shit immediately afterwards. There's just a lot that can go wrong in this fight at any given time. The best advice I can give you for this fight is to maybe have a water guard or two equipped to help reduce the damage from Ultra Blizzard, and to use a couple of boost armors as soon as possible, since most of his hard-hitting attacks are combat type attacks. The game does give you a DOA protection at the start of the dungeon, so that can help you not eat the pavement from Codebreaker, but it's not a guarantee. By far, the most useful tip I can give you is in regards to his gravity-like attacks. Just like Silverhorn, you really don't want to rely on life gain max due to how costly it is and the fact that one Fragmenting Cannon or Pulverizer Cannon will just mitigate all of that healing in an instant. You really have to rely on finding that sweet spot where you won't instantly die to the next 2 attacks, in which case you'll want to alternate between life gain 50 and life gain 25 to maximize your tank energy expenditure. And if you manage to get through that onslaught, you're greeted with Shadow the Mystical Space Typhoon taunting us about how much stronger he is because he shoved some Super Force metal up his shiny metal ass, to which Zero comes in to save our ass while we call our traitor friend the M-Slur, thus beginning Phase 2. In Phase 2, Shadow the Recovering Alcoholic has 28,000 hit points instead of 18,000, and has the same set of attacks as before minus Break Shield. However, I do notice that he likes to use Pulverizing Cannon a lot more, which works just fine for me, since that essentially means it's a free turn for damage or stat boosting. Whenever he begins charging energy, I'll know that I at least have 1 extra turn to make a move unless he's about to go twice or even 3 times in a row. For this reason, I actually find it more beneficial to make sure that I don't break him out of his charge, since the rest of his moveset is guaranteed to kill me if I'm on low health or if he just gets lucky and crits. At least I can prepare for a 75% HP loss, you know? I did try different setups, like equipping the Arrow Buster and some Light as a Feather Force Medals to increase my dodge rate as high as I could, but that didn't work out well. Honestly, this fight would probably have gone a lot better for me if not for one small problem. While you could burn down both phases of Shadow the Dreadlock by going X-Fire mode and flexing your superior muscles and defenses at him with your Charge Collider, he does have some very useful items that you can steal from both phases. Phase 1, you can steal a Gain Hyper and an Unlock Limiter. Unlock Limiter basically maximizes all of your stats for 3 turns as if you had used the appropriate stat boost item twice. The best part about this item is that it counts completely separate from the rest, and it stacks with the normal boost items. So if you really wanted to burst someone down, you could pop 2 boost powers, then unlock limiter right before double power charging someone to their demise, and it'd all be kosher. Meanwhile, Shadow the Jockstrap's second phase has a build armor and build shield available to steal. And while losing that extra +1 to my defense stats might not seem like much, it does help in the long run. So having to forsake at least one of my sub-weapon slots for item capture really does hurt, because no double power charge means the fight lasts much longer than I would want it to, which means more damage taken, which means more tank energy spent. You're seeing where I'm going with this. If I wanted to steal all 4 items, I need to be efficient, lucky, but most importantly, patient. Honestly, the only saving grace of this fight that didn't want to make me quit is the fact that each phase counts as its own fight. Meaning if you die to the second phase and retry, you start back at the second phase instead of having to redo all of phase 1 over again. However, if you're like me and have to experiment with different builds for this fight, then you're gonna have to replay the first phase all over again anyway. By far the most dangerous move to encounter in either phase is Codebreaker, since you have no way to protect yourself fully against insta-kills. I don't even know what the chances are for Codebreaker to kill you, but it's frequent enough to end some of my runs even when I feel like I've been doing well. So here's the best I could do in terms of preparations for this fight. For the main weapon, I equipped the Firebuster Mark II for power, item capture, and power charge. For my force medals, I equipped Water Guard to protect myself against his Ultra Blizzard, since that can very easily kill me outside of his other attacks, DOA protection to give me a better chance at surviving Codebreaker, and X-Heart and Decoy in case Codebreaker does kill me, or in case I make a mistake or the game decides that I die that run anyway, providing me with 2 self-revives and thus 2 extra chances to turn the fight around. So for the first phase, okay, I'm done with this joke now. So Shadow likes to start the first phase with charging up his pulverizer cannon. Not all the time, but most of the time. When he does this, I use my first turn to defend, then use the extra turn to boost my armor, and then another one on the following turn after his cannon goes off, granting me early protection from his melee attacks. After that, I boosted my speed to help ensure that Shadow doesn't get too many extra turns. From there, I focus on healing to make sure that I don't die to any of Shadow's attacks while stealing so that I can get some of his items. Luckily, I ended up stealing Gain Hyper on my first use of item capture, so that's one thing off my chest. Once Unlock Limiter follows suit shortly after, my focus shifts completely onto the fight itself, making sure that I am carefully maintaining my hit points above kill range and taking my time to attack at the right time, while also using boost power to ensure I kill Shadow quickly. This actually puts my damage output just high enough to be able to knock Shadow out of charging his penis cannon, which can be pretty useful if you're not too worried about Codebreaker, and you're able to maintain your hit points well enough. Eventually, I managed to find a decent loop where I could attack, then heal, then attack, then heal or attack as necessary, and so on and so forth. I could do this pretty consistently with all my stat buffs. Once Break Shield happens though, I go all out and go X-Fire mode with 95% weapon energy, hoping it would kill. Unfortunately, 45-46 damage was not enough to fell the beast, but one power charge basic attack did the trick. Once phase 2 starts up, you'll want to set up again as much as possible. Oh, that's me starting off with 544 hit points. Yeah, not healing right before this fight was a big mistake, but you can't blame me when I'm on the cusp of victory. However, this does present a problem. This error in judgment resulted in quite a few retries because Shadow decided to first turn me with a basic attack, wasting my X-Heart, then follow up with more attacks to waste my Decoy, and leaving me more defenseless than the Twin Towers. It also doesn't help that I was getting increasingly frustrated after so many retries, which led to me making a lot of rookie mistakes. Luckily, RNGesus was on my side and build armor dropped immediately this time around, which gave me hope to keep this run alive. Unfortunately, build shield took a little bit longer to drop, so I ended up risking it for the biscuit more times than I probably should have by hoping Shadow would go for a pulverizer cannon or a fragmenting cannon. This proved to be worth it once build shield did drop. At this point, my job was done, and now I needed to end this fight immediately, so I went X-Fire, charge collidered him for 75-94 damage, and used a Gain Hyper to maintain Hyper Mode for 7 more turns. For those of you wondering, you are correct that I didn't enter this fight at full power. I only had 3 turns of Hyper Mode left when I started phase 1, which explains why I was already running low in phase 2. While this might have been a case where using a Gain Hyper could have been avoided had I gone back to Hunter HQ and rested up, There's no doubt that it was the right play here, since X-Fire essentially guarantees my victory by granting me immunity to Codebreaker's instant kill effect, and gravity-like attacks like Fragmented and Pulverizer Cannon. With 1 turn remaining on my hyper mode, I used the 62% weapon energy I had left to go for one last Charge Collider, which turned out to be just enough damage to finish him off in 47 turns with a 10% XP boost. Congratulations everyone that did nothing. So after the fight, Zero gives us a scolding about how we're gaining too much weight, calling us too soft, when Shadow the fucking asshole tries to go for a Hail Mary shot at Zero, only to be intercepted by Spider and then taken out by the power of gambling. Zero kinda bitches about that, saying he didn't need help like the tsundere he is, but Shadow was having none of it and tells Zero he did it because he felt like it. He also felt like coming along despite his crippling energy because he was curious about what the Rebellion Army's ideals are. This does give brownie points to Zero for willing to tough it out against all odds, so they shake on it, and Zero once again joins our party. Permanently this time. After that exhausting battle, we return to HQ, check our deployment crew, and heal ourselves back to full. And wouldn't you believe it, there's extra dialogue here explaining why Spider continues to fight with a handicap on this mission. Essentially, he wants no one to check on his parts or run diagnostics on him for some reason. Marno also comments about how cool he is for taking a shot for a complete stranger. Zero, meanwhile, takes back his comment about X's weight and remembers how strong the power of friendship truly is. Meanwhile, Cinnamon is trying her best to become friends with Zero and thinks he's a sweetie pie for secretly caring about his friends. Anyways, intermission over, let's get some battles going and return to the Gimme All a Mines. The rest of this dungeon goes pretty smoothly. There's a puzzle where you have to give some miners the correct colored tools so that we can get an electric component to give to the foreman so that he can fix the elevator to the lower floor. So we do that. Upon reaching basement floor 4, we're greeted with a lot of build items, which we proceed to devour along with the build armor and shield we stole earlier. We're also greeted with a water, thunder, and fire guard force medal sitting inside a cramped room. I wonder why. There's also this door, which requires you to defeat some elemental enemies. The way these encounters work is they each throw 2 elemental globs followed by a third one which absorbs the weaknesses of the other 2. These 2 lightning globs, for example, are weak to fire, so the fire globs are here to ensure that you aren't quick to use ultra fire or a charge shot from the fire buster. These encounters aren't hard, just bring the elemental buster the majority are weak to, then finish off the last one with Charge Collider. Once those 3s are out of the way, the door to the boss room unlocks and we're greeted by Incentas. Turns out, the Rebellion Army needs money to fund their weapons, so Incentas was put in charge of the mining operation here to mine out as much Epsilon coin as possible for the Rebellion. This is, in fact, not the place where Super Force Metal was being made, and only served as a trap to lure X and his friends so that they can be forced into the mining operation. With X's deep hatred towards cryptocurrency, he decided it was time to put Incentas out of business once and for all.
Get what's coming to you!
Incentas has 36,000 life energy and is the first boss that can change his elemental weaknesses and resistances on the fly. Basically, at the start of each of his turns, Incentas cycles between fire, water, thunder, then back to fire. On these turns, he'll either use an ultra attack or a giga attack based on what element he's sitting on. But sometimes, he'll use Osiro Knuckle, which hits every party member twice for some shot damage. Luckily, this doesn't work like Mad Nautilus's Mad Ecstasy attack, where it will hit X 6 times if he's the only one alive, and will always only hit twice. This is pretty simple to manage, as you'd only need to apply a couple of boost shields to minimize Ashura Knuckles' damage. Later on, Incentas enters his own little hyper mode, and starts using stronger versions of his elemental attacks like Ultra Fire being upgraded to Ultra Giga Fire. You gotta love these names, man. Yeah, man, I hit you with the Super Ultra Mega Giga Fire attack, dude. At least the single target versions have creative names like Scorching Blaze, Eternal Glacier, and Judgment Thunder. Anyways, this fight is actually much easier to deal with after the nightmare of a boss that was Shadow. However, you are going to want to bring item capture if you want to steal his build weapon energy and life energy items, which I do end up doing. His elemental attacks deal over 1000 damage at base, which is already a problem since that's almost exactly half of my health. To avoid this catastrophe, we'll just have to combine the solutions we've had for Wild Django, Silverhorn, and Mach Gentra by equipping ourselves with Fire Guard, Thunder Guard, and a Water Guard. We also equipped a gain weapon energy +5 for a bit of extra weapon energy generation, so yeah. As for our main gear, I elected to stick with Firebuster, Item Capture, and Power Charge. Let me explain. Because Incentas cycles through his forms constantly, while also dealing damage to me, there's going to be a lot of turns spent healing myself among other things. Because of this, if I attack, I want to make sure it counts. And since he gains a weakness to fire while in Thunder form, I can just hold off my attack until then to ensure I deal as much damage as humanly possible. So as long as I don't hit Incentas while he's in Fire form, I should be able to kill him sooner than if I used a neutral element X-Buster. And as you can now see, his elemental damage has gone down low enough that I'm at least able to survive long enough to get some hits in, while managing my own HP pretty consistently. It does take a couple of tries, but with a mix of boost items, patience, and perseverance, Incentas goes bankrupt in 68 turns with an XP bonus of 20%. After destroying Incentas' crypto business, he attempts to leave us stranded in the mines, but instead, Spider sends him to the blockchain along with himself in an act of defiance. This satisfies the door gods and we escape. With Spider being mourned by the party, we are greeted with this departing message as we continue the rest of the game without our poker-addicted comrade.